Is the Trump and Mamdani bromance already coming to an end? What's up, guys? Steven here. Today we are going to be taking a look at Zohran Mamdani's first interview since the meeting in the Oval Office with President Trump. Once again, I'm here to break it down for you, wade through the fluff and all the political BS. Watch to the end to get our code word for the day, but for now, let's jump into it. Obviously, NBC News is a more left-leaning organization, so we already know they're going to be asking questions a little more critical of Trump and a little more softball to Zohran, but let's see what they get into. We start with the host Welker asking Zohran if he felt surprised by the warm welcome he received by President Trump.
You know, I was looking forward to having the meeting with the president to speak about the needs of the 8.5 million people who call the same city we love home, and to speak, frankly, about the affordability crisis that is pushing so many of them out of those 5 boroughs. And I found in the meeting that I had with the president a productive one, and a meeting that came back again and again to the central themes of the campaign that we ran: the cost of housing, cost of childcare, the cost of groceries, the cost of utilities. And it showed that this is an opportunity to now start to deliver so that people can do more than just aspire to struggle in New York City, but actually to be able to live.
Zohran responded, reiterating a lot of the same talking points that him and Trump shared in the Oval Office around unity and combined efforts towards affordability. Welker pushes back once again, trying to sow a little division and say, did you really expect it to be so chummy with Mr. Trump?
You know, I thought again and again about what it would mean for New Yorkers if we could establish a productive relationship that would focus on the issues that those New Yorkers stay up late at night thinking about. Because so often in our politics, we try and tell people what they should be worried about, what they should be concerned about. But when you actually ask New Yorkers and you listen to them, you hear it come back to the issues that animated not just the conversation the president and I had with the press after our meeting, but frankly in the meeting itself. It was a conversation where we spoke about the need to deliver on this agenda. And I appreciated that when the president, when we had that meeting, it wasn't just in the Oval Office. He also took me into the cabinet room, and there we were looking at portraits of presidents of years gone by, and we admired a portrait of FDR. And in many ways, when I think about the candidacy that we've put forward, it looks to Fiorello LaGuardia as the greatest mayor in New York City history. You can't tell the story of LaGuardia without telling the story of FDR and the story of a relationship with the federal government that finally delivered at the scale of the crisis it was facing.
I think Zohran gives a great response here, reiterating the unity that him and Trump had during the meeting and talking about how the president working with the mayor of New York has been historically important. Welker responds to these claims of unity by asking Zohran, but the president said all these horrible, evil things about taking over New York while you were campaigning. What did he say during that meeting that changed his mind? Do you think it really changed his mind?
No, I believed the president in the conversation that we had, and I will continue to make the case, both to the president and to the country at large, about the needs of New Yorkers. Because what I found, frankly, is that New Yorkers have grown tired of being asked to believe in a system that has delivered very little for them. They're tired of a politics that expects everything from them while delivering little. And what they want now is a politics that can see the scale of the crisis in front of it and actually start to work together to deliver.
And Zohran replies, defending the president. Welker retorts with another great example of why you don't hate the media enough, saying that President Trump hasn't delivered on all these promises. What in that meeting made you think differently?
Well, I spoke to the president about the fact that while our campaign technically began on October 23rd last year, for many people, they became aware of it after the president won his election. And when I went out and spoke to New Yorkers, asking them who did they vote for and why, in 2 neighborhoods that swung most significantly towards the president. This was Fordham Road in the Bronx, Hillside Avenue in Queens. And I shared with the president that when I asked those New Yorkers why did they vote for the president, they told me again and again it was cost of living, cost of living, cost of living. And when the president and I were speaking, we were speaking about what is preventing from delivering on that affordability agenda. Sometimes it's a lack of taking on the broken system that we have. And I spoke about in New York City, for example, zoning regulations. We spoke about ULURP. This is a process by which you either approve or deny zoning changes that are made in New York City. We spoke about the need to change so many of those situations such that a developer doesn't tell you the thing more expensive than labor or materials is waiting. And we also spoke about the importance of understanding what it is that hurts New Yorkers in their pockets. It's their rent, it's their childcare, it's their utilities, and it's their childcare. Because the childcare, I say twice, because it is the second highest cost after housing, $22,500 a year for a single child.
Zohran gives a great response here again, focusing on his and the president's joint commitment to try and fix the affordability issue and what's really causing that in America. While they may have different stances on how to fix it, they both can agree that it is a problem and certain things are causing it. And sowing the lovely seeds of division does, Welker moves on to ask him, what about President Trump sending troops to New York?
Now, I told the president that the cornerstone of an affordability agenda is public safety, and that it is critically important to me. And for all that has been said and all that has been spoken about, and the tens of millions of dollars looking to make New Yorkers fearful of that question, the truth of it is, in fact, that I'm looking forward to working with the NYPD to deliver on that. And I shared with the president that my decision to retain Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch is in large part a recognition of the fact that in her time leading the NYPD, she has driven down crime across the 5 boroughs while starting to uproot corruption that was endemic in the top echelons of that department under Mayor Adams.
Mamdani responds, kind of dodging the question, but really trying to tie it back to the theme of unity between him and the president, speaking about their joint commitment to fight crime in New York City. While the president may believe a lot of that crime is due to immigration, Mamdani can agree that criminals, whether immigrant or non-immigrant, need to be handled. Welker, beating her head against the wall that she's not getting what she wanted, asked Zohran again if he got a clear-cut commitment that the president will not be sending troops into New York.
He told me that he cared deeply about public safety. I said,
When Zohran tries to respond, she cuts him off again, clarifying, but did he say he wouldn't send troops? And Zohran continues with his talking point of unity.
What I told him is that what separates New York City from anywhere else in the country is we have the NYPD. And I trust the NYPD to deliver public safety. And to me, that is something that I know that they can do, that they have done, and they will continue to do under my leadership.
Welker now asks for a 4th time, so he didn't rule out sending troops to New York.
I made it very clear what we wanted to do was to deliver public safety and affordability, and the NYPD would be the ones to do so.
Now to what I think is probably the most shocking part of the interview. Welker, in her continued attempt to make Zohran throw Trump under the bus, asked him about the fascist question once again, offering to give him an open floor to explain if he believes Trump is a fascist or not. And take a listen to how Zohran responds.
And after President Trump said that, I said yes. And
so you do.
And that's something that I've said in the past. I say it today. And I think what I appreciated about the conversation that I had with the president was that we were not shy about the places of disagreement about the politics that has brought us to this moment. And we also wanted to focus on what it could look like to deliver on a shared analysis of an affordability crisis for New Yorkers.
Now, if you're right wing, you're probably pissed hearing that answer, but I would say slow it down for a sec, take a deep breath, because if you really think about it, he had an opportunity there to pile on, call Trump a bunch of naughty names like a lot of the people on the left like to do. Instead, he acknowledged that he said that in the past, that he still feels that way. He doesn't actually then repeat the statement at all, if you noticed, and then goes on to talk about things that they unified on, which, of course, Welker quickly switches to the next subject and asks him if he still believes Trump is a threat to democracy. Here's Zohran's response.
Everything that I've said in the past, I continue to believe, and that's the thing that I think is important in our politics, is that we don't shy away from where we have disagreements, but we understand what it is that brings us to that table, because I'm not coming into the Oval Office to make a point or make a stand. I'm coming in there to deliver for New Yorkers. And a few weeks ago, I was asked by a reporter 3 words to describe myself. I said, New York City. And that's what animated that conversation. How do we deliver for the people of New York City?
Zohran gives another answer focused on kind of unity and fixing the problem rather than focusing on negative statements he's made in the past. And Welker comes back with, well, if you believe all this mean stuff about Trump, how can you work with him? How can you be at peace with him? How can you be buddy-buddy?
I think working for the people of New York City demands that you work with everyone and anyone, and that you always look to find those areas of agreement while not overlooking the places of disagreement. And I think this was something that came up in our meeting. We spoke about immigration. We spoke about the fact that in New York City, we have sanctuary city policies that allow for the city to work with the federal government on around 170 serious crimes. The concern for so many New Yorkers comes about anything beyond that. And I spoke about the importance of us being able to protect New Yorkers, and some of the incidents that we see, they do not do that.
I think that answer is a pretty big win for the right, to be honest. You have Mamdani, who's now the mayor of New York, front-runner Democratic candidate, acknowledging that there is criminal migrants and that he does want to get them taken care of. I think that's a win for the right, honestly. A lot of the left and the left media want to portray this worldview that migrants don't do crime, it doesn't exist. Mamdani acknowledging that and saying he can come together with the president on that, but where their views separate is on the other people that ICE is being taken away. I think that's a real fair point, a real fair argument. All right, then she plays a clip of Bernie Sanders saying Trump did a better job to secure the border than Biden. I think honestly you have to be an idiot to not think that that's the case. It's very obvious that our border was not secure under Biden and is now much more secure under Trump. Either way, in some kind of gotcha clip, she asked him if he thinks Trump has done a better job than Biden in securing the border, and here's his response.
I haven't thought much about comparing presidents on the question of securing the border. I think it's important that it's secure, and I also think it's important that we have an immigration system that is humane. And that's what I spoke about with the president, is that New Yorkers want to see humanity in the policies that are being implemented.
She follows up asking if he gives Trump any credit for the work he's done on the border.
What I give President Trump credit for is the meeting that we had yesterday was one that was focused on how we could work together for New Yorkers. And the place that we could do so most effectively, frankly, is ensuring every New Yorker can afford the city they live.
Another solid unifying answer from Zohran, I gotta say. Welker then, now halfway through the interview, finally brings up the main point of Zohran's campaign, which is affordability for New York, and asks him, with the increases and stuff he'd like to do, he needs the governor to sign off. He talked with the governor yesterday. Has she actually agreed to implement any of his policies?
The governor and I had a productive conversation, and what we both committed to is working together for the affordability agenda. And one thing I appreciate of the many about Governor Hochul is that she's been focused not just on affordability, but specifically on universal childcare for quite some time. And now is the time to bring a partner forward in City Hall. And I've said plainly and openly that I believe that these are two tax proposals that make sense, increasing the personal income taxes on New Yorkers making $1 million or more by just 2%, increasing the top corporate tax rate to match that of New Jersey. And what I've also said is more important than how we fund something is that we fund something. And if there are additional or alternate revenue streams to do so, I will accept them and I will celebrate them, because the most important thing is to actually deliver for the New Yorkers who right now can't even conceive of having a family in New York City because of how expensive we've made childcare across the country.
Welker follows up saying, all of the things you've proposed to do are very expensive. Can you actually do that without the governor's sign off on raising taxes?
Well, I'm thankful that I'm not going to have to engage in the hypothetical, because I am confident of the two of us working together to deliver on this agenda and ensure that finally, and this goes back to just that portrait of FDR, we look at what politics has been in the past. It has been there in the moments of such transformation, meeting the scale of the crisis. We can do that again.
Welker then moves the conversation on to crime, asking him about his defund the police rhetoric 5 years ago. And now that he's in charge of the largest police force, is he going to actually defund them or increase the amount of police officers?
I've said over the course of the campaign that I think the number we have had budgeted of 35,000 officers is a sufficient number. What we have to do, however, is allow those officers to focus on policing. And what I mean by that is that in 2020, the response time for the NYPD was less than 11 minutes. Today, it's closer to 16 minutes. Large part of that is because officers are now having to deal with 200,000 mental health calls a year. And so our proposal is create a Department of Community Safety, task it with the mental health crisis, the homelessness crisis, and allow officers to focus on serious crimes so we can get back to the work of delivering on this, as opposed to being trapped in a political discourse without addressing the systemic crisis.
Welker follows up saying Tish has been successful at lowering crime. If she says she needs more cops, shouldn't you listen to her?
The reason I made the decision to retain Commissioner Tish is because of the importance of outcomes. The fact that she has been able to deliver on rooting out corruption while lowering crime is something to be celebrated. And I think the commissioner and I have been very clear that what brings us together is a shared importance of public safety. I think we can do that with the officers.
Still not getting anything very decisive or negative out of Zohran, she decides to switch the topic to anti-Semitism, specifically asking about the synagogue protests and attacks in New York City on Jewish Americans.
That I'm looking forward to being the next mayor of New York City and fulfilling the commitment I've made to Jewish New Yorkers over the course of this campaign, which is a commitment to not only protect them across the 5 boroughs, but to celebrate and cherish them. And what that looks like is rooting out anti-Semitism. It looks like increasing funding for hate crime prevention programs by 800%. And it also looks like ensuring that we have NYPD protection outside of synagogues and temples, especially on the high holy days. And I want to just say, recently on Yom Kippur, there was a horrific anti-Semitic attack in Manchester. A rabbi in New York City reached out to me and said, could you ensure that there's additional police protection outside of the synagogue for today? I said, absolutely. And I also asked, what if that rabbi did not know the next mayor of New York City? We have to make it so that it doesn't matter who you know. It matters that you will get that safety and security because you're a New Yorker. That's the administration I'm going to put together.
Now, I'm not 100% sold on Mamdani really believing this point. I don't know if he truly believes anti-Semitism in New York is an issue that he needs to tackle or not. Just didn't come across as the most sincere response in the world to me. But she moves on to asking him about the future of the Democratic Party and asks him if the Democratic Socialist wing is actually something that can win across the United States.
I think a focus on the importance of dignity for working people is something that appeals to people across this country. I will not venture into the world of national politics and punditry, but what I will tell you is that in New York City, we saw so many of the same dynamics we'd seen elsewhere. We'd seen a shift towards the right. We'd seen obituaries being written about the Democratic Party's ability to speak to young people, to speak to Asian voters, speak especially to young men. And I actually shared this with the president, that the very constituencies that he had won over, that were a critical part of his increased vote share in New York City, were the ones that we then looked at as who we should focus on to bring back into the party. And I think that when you speak to those constituencies with the same respect you'd speak to any other, you will see that they will then engage in the process. We saw an increase in voter turnout amongst 18 to 29-year-olds by more than 300%. And that's because we spoke to them as New Yorkers who are facing an affordability crisis, not as young people we have to finger wag to participate in democracy.
I actually really like the fact that Mamdani doesn't want to jump in and speculate on national politics or anything else and tries to keep things focused on New York and not make broader assumptions about what his win means for the country or this, that, and the other thing. I think that's a good thing for him to do. I think a lot of politicians in his position would probably drive things back to how, they're the leader of a movement and blah, 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 blah. And a lot of people are saying things like that about him, but he's not publicly saying that. I think that's important. And she rounds off the interview asking about a phone call he had with former President Obama, where he offered to be a sounding board for him during his mayoral time.
You know, one thing I really appreciated about the conversations I've had with the president have been the importance of what it looks like, not only to inspire hope, but to sustain it and then to deliver on it. And time again, that comes back to the city hall that you're putting together. And even right now, we have about 40 odd days of a transition. Transitions are typically a time of pageantry and pomp. We want it to be a time of substance, a time of purpose. And so we ensured that the first day after the election, we announced our 4 incredible co-chairs of our transition, our executive director. And then the week after that, the first deputy mayor, the chief of staff. We're moving much faster than typical because we want January 1st to be a day where we start to deliver, not start to prepare. And I appreciate President Obama's emphasis of what it looks like to prepare in advance so that you can deliver.
And that was it for the interview. I think this one was an important one to cover because it is the first one since his meeting with the president, and that meeting with the president has been so viral, not only because they're two people from diametrically opposed viewpoints, but because they actually came together peacefully and talked like normal humans. They didn't just scream obscenities at each other. We didn't know that was possible nowadays. And listening to Kristen Welker's questions, I don't think she would have handled it with that much grace, let's just say. But I think he did a good job at dodging all the divisive questions. Now, does that necessarily mean he's going to be a candidate of unity? No, he could speak about unity and then work divisive in the background, but hopefully, we may be getting to a point in U.S. politics where everybody's getting so sick of the blame game, the name calling, the twisting of facts, the changing of reality to fit agendas, that leaders from both sides can actually sit down and have a conversation, find mutual ground where they can work together and accomplish the same goal through different means. Maybe that's optimistic, but it's a refreshing sight to see. I do think Mamdani missed a bit of an opportunity to further that unity by separating himself from his old rhetoric about the president, saying clearly, no, after meeting with him, I don't believe he's a fascist, but we do significantly vary in viewpoints. He didn't do that. He kept the same talking point. I don't really blame him. I think the Dems would probably string him up if he didn't agree that President Trump was a fascist. That's something that the Democratic Party needs to change. You gotta stop calling people that don't agree with you fascists and Nazis, okay? I get called that all the time, and I'm definitely far from far right. It's ridiculous. But if you watch this far into the video and you want to leave a comment below and let me know that you watched and you're not just some bot trying to push a political agenda, today's secret word is mayonnaise. So put that along with your opinion in the comments and we will all know together we're talking to a real person. Otherwise, guys, if you like the video, please subscribe. Have a great day. Let's get back to work. Keep praying. I'll see you in the next one.